I'm with Stephen Jaffe from the Board of Deputies, and we're talking about the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Firstly, Stephen, what is the Temple Mount?
Well, I think the best way I can answer that was yesterday. In the Jewish calendar, it was a fast day called Tisha B'Av, and it's a commemoration of the destruction of the first and second temples of Jerusalem. Isn't it amazing that 2,000 years after the Roman destruction of the temple and 2,500 years after the Babylonian destruction of the temple, the Jewish people are still commemorating those tragedies as a fast day. So the Temple Mount in Jerusalem is where we understand the temple was situated, the Holy of Holies. It is the central place of Judaism, and the Western Wall, which many of course visit, Christians, Jews and others, is an outward retaining wall of that temple structure which was on the Temple Mount.
So is this the holiest place in Israel for Jews?
I think for Jews around the world, it is the holiest place. Wherever we pray, whether we're in London or in New York or in Singapore, we're turning towards Jerusalem and more particularly towards that Temple Mount. So yes, it is absolutely central to the Jewish people, as it is in the Christian tradition as well, because we read in the New Testament, Jesus was in the temple. So it is part of Jewish and Christian tradition of the importance of Jerusalem as the temple, the place where the temple was located.
So the Jews really have history here, and it's not only the Temple Mount, there's other things that have happened there as well, isn't there?
Totally. I mean, in terms of Jewish tradition, we believe this is the site where Abraham took Isaac in the famous story of the binding of Isaac, the sacrifice of Isaac when God intervened. But this is believed to have happened on that Temple Mount. So the connection in Jewish tradition goes right back to our origins as a people. The Bible refers it to the place which God would inform the Jewish people as to where it is. And it is, of course, the place where David made his capital, moving from Hebron to Jerusalem.
Now, UNESCO have recently had a resolution. What was that resolution, and what does it mean?
Well, UNESCO, as a United Nations agency, have passed a series of resolutions about Jerusalem. Essentially, they refer to the Temple Mount only in terms of its Arabic and Islamic name, refusing to acknowledge that it has any significance to either Jews or Christians. And that Western Wall, they also refer to by its Arabic name. What the UNESCO resolution is saying is that this is occupied territory. In other words, the Israelis have no right to be there. They are there as an occupier. And you might suggest, well, of course, Muslim states might say that, Arab states might say that, but actually when you look at the countries that are voting for this resolution or abstaining from it rather than voting against it, and you see a huge cross-section of the world, of the nations of the world, Brazil voting for that kind of resolution, denying the Jewish people, and I would say the Christian people's biblical connection to Jerusalem. So we're seeing here an absolute challenge being thrown down to us to say that Jerusalem is a Islamic and an exclusively Islamic holy site, and the Palestinian Authority does not hide that. This is what the imams are saying, that Jerusalem is not there to be shared. They say it is exclusively a Muslim holy site. So this is the challenge that we're facing.
Are they saying to every Jew and every Christian, you're a liar and you have no history here?
Well, they're certainly saying you have no history here. They're not saying you're a liar in so many words, but that is the only interpretation you can give. Now, the Israeli situation is that Israel has respected the right of Muslims to pray on the Temple Mount. In fact, they're the only people who are permitted to pray at the Temple Mount. Jews and Christians can visit, but in deference to the Muslim presence there, we're not allowed to pray there. It's called the status quo. Israel, I think, would be unique in the world to have taken control of an area of so much spiritual importance to it, and yet acknowledged the right of worship of others on that site, and beyond that to have restricted the rights of their own people. And yet that is not respected, it's not acknowledged. It is actually, I think, in terms of the resolutions that are being passed and what's being said by the Palestinian Authority, it is being thrown back in Jewish faces that we have no right to be there.
Now, just recently there was a terror attack which started from the Temple Mount. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, very sadly, 2 Israeli policemen lost their lives. They were actually from the Druze community, which is an ancient religious tradition in Israel. It's kind of an offshoot of Islam, I think. And the people who murdered them were Israeli Arabs who had smuggled automatic weapons onto the Temple Mount and hidden them in the mosque. As a result of that murder, Israel placed security apparatus on the entrances to the Temple Mount, which is no different from what we would pass through going through an airport or to a particular venue. The response from the Palestinian Authority and the Muslim world was to say that Israel, in putting basic security equipment there, was undermining what I've described as the status quo, that it putting security apparatus was a desecration, or they never referred to the murder of those 2 policemen as a desecration or a defilement. But Israel's response in putting very basic security apparatus there was condemned in the strongest terms, and people were provoked into a day of rage, a day of violence, to show their opposition to what Israel was doing. And a Jewish family were slaughtered, 3 of them, on their Friday night Shabbat, their Sabbath table.
Won't these metal detectors actually protect Israelis, but actually protect Palestinians as well?
Totally, it's there to protect everyone who uses the Temple Mount, whether they're Muslims, Jewish or Christian visitors, or the security forces there. Anyone with a reasonable attitude would realize it is important to safeguard the security of people there. And if you visit Mecca, that similar apparatus is there. If you visit the Vatican, again, similar security apparatus. But it became a matter of huge controversy when Israel tried to protect and safeguard people visiting the Temple Mount.
And sadly now Israel's taken down the metal detectors. Is this pressure from around the world?
Totally. Absolutely. I should imagine that Israel, and I'm not privy to what exactly was said, but was told that its relationship with Jordan, with which it has a peace treaty, would be at stake, that its relationship with the wider Arab world was going to be undermined. So I should imagine the pressure was coming from all corners of this earth to say to Israel not to do something which we would expect of any reasonable government to do.
Are you seeing signs of a third intifada or uprising?
Well, that was certainly a major concern, and I don't think we're out of the woods yet. There is no doubt that if the Muslim and Arab world wish to provoke another intifada, they will say that the Jews are seeking to destroy the mosque. That's what we continually hear, that the Jews want the mosque, they want it flattened, they want to take over, and this is a very emotional cry that the likes of the president of the Palestinian Authority, Abbas, are saying, Hamas is saying it, Iran is saying it. They want to provoke another intifada, even though they know that the brunt of that will be taken by who? By ordinary Palestinian people. It is a total disregard for the safety and well-being and the future betterment of Palestinians, of a younger generation of Palestinians who deserve a better future. But it's not going to come by intifada. It's not going to come by spreading lies about Israel and the Jewish people. It will come only through peace and dialogue.
As an Orthodox Jew, what is your prayer for the Temple Mount?
Well, we're commanded by God, as Jews and Christians and all of earth, to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And I know that Christians take that very seriously. That is a commandment from God. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem, and I can think of no better prayer for Jerusalem than that contained in the Psalms.
Okay, Stephen, thank you very much.
Thank you so much indeed.